Well, it's that time of year again, and the next trip on the bike, which is scheduled for May, and the planning of it starts right now. So it's January, and this is the time of the year that I normally start planning the trip that I'm going to do on a motorcycle around about sort of May time. And I do it now because it's obviously a better time of the year. I'm free of a lot of work. Weather's pretty crap outside, so not great incentive to get out. The bike, in fact, is sitting in the living room, which is what it normally does this time of year. And so it's a good time to sit down, take a look at the maps, work out where you're going to go. And of course, also doing it this time of year, very important to book certain things up in advance, like your ferries, because they can get booked up. The prices can change, can go up. I always book a flexi ticket because if you do that, then if you do have some changes as the time progresses on, then you can change that. And also this time of year, I start to book some of the accommodation. I mean, obviously, once you've configured out what sort of route you're going to do, then you can configure into that route where you want to stop, how long you're going to be there. Budgeting, of course, is really important, and a trip like I'm about to undertake, which is 3 and a bit weeks, is a serious consideration when you're budgeting. So you need to work out. I tend not to stay in hotels for two reasons. One, because I find them quite expensive. Yeah, they do come with everything. I mean, you get your breakfast, you might have an evening meal included, although very often that's an extra. But I find that once you get sort of trapped into a hotel situation, you are there. And your breakfast will be delivered at a certain time and all the rest of it. So I tend to use Airbnbs, and I obviously go as a solo traveller. So it's a little bit expensive because, of course, a lot of the Airbnbs I'm booking would accommodate 2 or 3 people, and I'm actually paying for one. So my budgeting around Airbnbs is generally somewhere between about 35, 40 quid up to about sort of 70 quid, and that's me per day, top whack. This year, I'm doing quite well. I've started planning quite a few already. I'll show you some in a minute. And I'm getting quite a few of them around about the £30 mark. So when you take into account, you've got whatever it might be, number of days, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20 days, whatever, and you've got to accommodate, you've got to find accommodation for it at the time the cost starts to escalate. Add on to that, of course, you need to feed yourself. But that's can be again done more cheaply because you very often on these Airbnbs, certainly the ones I go for, always have a small kitchen, so you can buy things in the local supermarket, prepare your own food if you so want to do. You can obviously go out for a meal if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Obviously getting yourself a drink and that's fine. And I find in the mornings to head off, don't always take a breakfast. Very often what I'll do is I pull in a petrol station and have a coffee and a croissant. In France particularly, Spain is also very good for that. They do some lovely buttery croissants and some nice coffee, and it's very, very cheap, and you can get that, fill up your fuel, and you're good for the day. So that's the sort of thing that I will be doing, and as I say, route planning has started. Combination of other things you need to think about at this time of the planning stage is make sure your bike's going to be serviced around about the time you're going to be going or before. Make sure obviously it's taxed and insured in good time, and obviously you've got to talk to people like an insurance company to make sure that they are aware that you're taking the time abroad. Generally speaking, that's not an issue. They'll just issue with a green card or a piece of paper to say that you're okay to do that. Certain things you do need for traveling in France, you need a little sticker on your bike if you want to go into some of the towns or cities, because they have, like they do over here, emission targets. And obviously if you don't have that ticket, it costs nothing, €3 or €4. If you buy it direct from the French, don't buy it from one of these companies that advertise them online, because you'll pay 30, 40 quid. And you don't need to do that. Just go on the direct French travel site and they will supply you one, come through the post. It lasts for the life of the bike, so it's only a one-off. And as I say, it's about €3 or €4. If you're going to other places, other countries, you need to check up what's going on. If you're going into Switzerland, you may need a motorway pass. In fact, you will need a motorway pass. And those come out around about 40 quid. Again, that's for a year, I think. So those are things you need to look into. I have mentioned this before. If you're thinking of taking a motorcycle abroad into Europe and you're going to stay for more than 30 days, or you're traveling onto other countries which gives you more than 30 days, just make sure that the motorcycle that you have is your own. And if it's not your own, in other words, you've got it on finance, you will have to have an agreement from your finance company, which will allow you to keep that bike, travel with that bike after the 30-day period. And I'm saying 30-day period, it might be worth checking with your finance company to make sure that they're happy with 30 days. Some of them may not be. Reason being for this is the fact that the bike, of course, is not completely yours, and they don't like the idea of it going abroad. It could be stolen. You could be involved in an accident. There's all manner of things. What I would say to you is don't skirt around this one. Talk to your finance company. Let them know what you're doing. Because if you don't let them know what you're doing and something awful did happen, they may say, well, I'm sorry, we're not having anything to do with this, and therefore you'd have to pay for your bike. Your insurance might not even count. I mean, there's a whack of things that could go wrong. So talk to them. Travel insurance. For the likes of myself, I'm getting on in years now, so I do take out travel insurance. We are in Europe. We do still have an agreement with them. There's still an e-HIC type card available, but it's not, it's not a guarantee. So I would advise that you take out some sort of travel insurance. And if you don't have any health issues, then generally speaking, for a one-off trip or a multi-trip, they can be quite cheap. In fact, it's worth checking the multi-trips because sometimes they work out slightly better because you might want to go again or you might want to go somewhere else. So that's a good thing to consider. I'll talk again probably later about the ins and outs of what you need to take on the bike and what you don't need to take. My instant advice to you would be, when it comes to packing, don't pack too much. I've done 2-3 trips now, big trips, and overpacked every time. Just took too many clothes. You've got to bear in mind that you're sitting on a motorcycle, so you're not actually doing a lot. So changing your t-shirt and everything else every day is not a necessity. And in fact, if you're going somewhere nice and warm and sunny, which is what we all want to do, then generally speaking, when you get to where you're going, there's always a sink. Sometimes there's even a washing machine, but just get your stuff washed up, hang it on the veranda overnight, and you'll find in the morning it's nice and dry, you can put it on again. So I only take more about 4 t-shirts. I take 4 of everything. I mean, that's it, basically. Obviously, when it comes to outerwear, you need to take a mixture of clothing because you don't know whether it's going to be wet, dry, cold, warm. You have no idea. So, and obviously you need protective gear as well. And that's something to bear in mind. If you go to some of these countries, just check what the rules and regulations are. I know for a fact that in France and Spain, mandatory to wear CE marked gloves, motorcycle gloves. So you can't go around without gloves on. Well, you can, but if you do get caught, there's an on-the-spot euro fine. So that's the sort of thing you need to think about. So we'll talk about that perhaps later on, or another video nearer the time. So when it comes to actually planning the route, and I do everything on the computer here. So as you can see, I've got the route up, the map up, and I just literally sort of figure out where I'm going. So on this occasion, I'm heading to Monaco, and so that will give me an idea of the routes coming to Monaco. I want to come in through the mountains, so I'm actually going to come sort of down from Roscoff, cut across as it would be east, and head into the mountains near Annecy. And beautiful place up in Annecy. I mean, I've been there many times before. It really is quite a super place, and there's a really good route called the Route de Alpes, which is a fantastic route which takes you sort of right down the centre of the Alps and drops you in just above Nice, which I'd like to do. But of course, you can't guarantee that because they may be snow-capped and they may be closed in sort of mid-May. It's a possibility, although the way things are looking at the moment, there's very little snow over there, but that might all change. So that's something you need to bear in mind if you're booking accommodation and you're booking it at altitude. Just bear in mind that, of course, things may change. You may not be able to get there. And that's one important thing just perhaps to mention, that whenever you're booking accommodation, whether it be Airbnb or hotels or whatever, I seriously suggest that you always make sure that you can cancel without any penalty, i.e. get all your money back, literally within a few days of you arriving. I mean, sometimes you can get it sort of like 2 or 3 days before. Sometimes you can get it the day before. But it's worth considering, because if you don't and you book up and you pay and you haven't checked the cancellation agreement, then you may get caught with either the full amount if you leave it too late, half amount or percentages of whatever. So do really think about that. So yeah, it's another thing to consider in the planning stage. So as you get along and you start doing your planning on the map, then you really do need to get yourself some sort of chart, or I use Excel just to kind of put everything in, because that gives me the days that I'm away, and I can see on screen then dead simply where I am. And in fact, I'm just going to go and have a little look on here, because I actually do have that. I've got very slow. Yeah, so we've got it up on screen now, and as you see, I've put in various places that I am going to. There's lots of blanks at the moment because I've only really started doing, as you can see, accommodation is pretty well done. I also do a running total, so I know what I'm spending, you know, because it starts to add up. I mean, we're up with the ferries nearly £1,000 already. It's quite scary. Although, you know, you're going away for a long time. So, but this is why I find it's important to keep the costs down. And you'll see here I've got some B&Bs at £30 a night, £24 a night, £32, £23. There are some double ones there. So 2 nights would be 114 quid, and another 75 one up there. That's another 2-nighter. I've actually got it down as, oh no, sorry, that is a 1-nighter, but that's in a hotel. And also things I put on about when the payments are coming out. So if I've paid for a night, which I've got a hotel here with the Wild Southwest Posse, who's the guys I'm meeting up with, then that money's going to come out on the 2nd of the 6th, unless I cancel beforehand. 3 words. Makes it a lot easier to find it when you're on the bike, and then I just simply add that into here, and that will then come up and tell me where it is that I'm going. So yeah, so that's something that I do as well. That's giving you an insight as to where I am so far with the planning. Other people might have different ways of doing it, and I'm sure there are other ways. Some might be better, but it works for me, and I find it, you know, to have everything sort of partially set, but not set in stone, is a very useful way of travelling. And you know, between now and when we go, many things can happen, both at home and abroad. Things do change, and so that's why I say it is really important, I think, to make sure that everything you've got is on a refundable or a flexi basis, where you can change travel plans relatively easy, and obviously then getting money back, because money's not easy to come by these days. And you know, these trips can be expensive, but I'm a great believer at my age now, you know, I'm now into my 70th year, that if you don't do it, you won't do it. And there's lots of places to see. There's lots of places. I've been very lucky. I have travelled extensively, and I have seen a lot of places. Lived and worked in France as well, so I know France really, really well. It's a favourite country of mine to visit, and equally with Spain as well. I know that extremely well. But there are places I haven't been to, and travelling on a motorcycle is completely different to travelling in a car or a van, you know, camper. I always have an open-faced helmet on, so you're open to the elements. You smell the lavender as you go through Provence, and smell the countryside, and almost taste it. It's fantastic. So yeah, it can be a great adventure. And as I said to you before, I do it very, very steady. I don't roar around. I'm not a roarer. This time, by the way, just incidentally, I will be using some of the French auto routes. I don't normally use them, but I will be doing that, and they are incredibly cheap for motorcycles to go on. And of course, they're not busy, generally speaking, unless you happen to be travelling in the Grand Vacances, join the Grand Vacances, and check those dates. So they're great. Obviously, you need to consider coming off to get fuel, because fuel is expensive, like it is on motorways here. But generally, running on a auto route is very cheap, and of course, you can get a lot of miles under your belt very, very easily. So that's something on this occasion I will be doing. Okay, that's enough for this video. I think that's given you some tips and some thoughts as to how I go about it, and hopefully you guys out there thinking about it, whether you decide to go across the channel, whether you decide just to stay at home and tour Great Britain, which is fantastic. I wish you all good luck with that. And if anybody wants to make any comments or ask any questions, I'm always open to that. And I'm known as the Booze-Free Biker. That is pretty obvious as to what that means. So I do go everywhere sober. and I enjoy life just as much as I used to before in my heavy drinking days. And I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder or wondering whether I should get on the bike or not. So, yeah.